Hi everybody, my name is Cynthia from Very Cherry Cakes, and today I'm going to share with you 10 things that I have learned throughout the years that have helped my cake business be a little bit more successful. So these are my 10 tips and 10 things I've learned. I hope they help you, and let's get right into them. Okay, so first of all, I do want to start off by saying that these are just things that I have learned that really helped me that I didn't know before I started my business. So I just want to put that out there. These are definitely my opinion and what has worked for me. So I also do have a set of notes down here, so I'll be looking up and down. I hope that doesn't bother you. Okay, so my first tip for you is to research the cottage law in your state. Basically what a cottage law is, it allows for individuals to sell certain non-potentially hazardous foods or canned goods from your home without a license. Now, as far as cottage laws in different states, they do vary. Some states are more strict than others. For example, when I was working under the cottage law back in Texas, you are allowed to sell things that do not require refrigeration. So for example, cakes, cookies, breads, pastries, things of that nature. But there were some restrictions on fillings. So you couldn't have like fruit fillings that would potentially go bad or become hazardous outside of the refrigerator. So as far as that goes, definitely be sure to really look into that, because it is a great way for you to start a home business without having to register as an actual company or without having to get it licensed. Number 2 on my list is to choose your specialty, whether that is cookies, cakes, cupcakes, dipped apples, gummies. There's so many things that you can do, but what I did find hard in the beginning is that I wanted to dive into everything. I wanted to make cookies, cake pops, apples, all kinds of things. And although I do have to say that, you know, I encourage you to try different things, but also do it in a way where you are successful. So don't overload yourself with trying to sell different things, because remember that every time you do bring a new item into your menu, you have to consider new equipment, new packaging, new pricing. So you have to like take your pricing and figure out that as to know how much you're going to charge your client. So definitely choose a specialty, whether that is offering cakes and cookies in the beginning. It's okay to only offer one thing in your menu when you're starting out. And this all ties into pricing. It ties into knowing who to market to. So you don't need 20 different items in your menu to be successful. But you do need to be very good at the one thing that you are selling to be successful. For tip number 3, and this is something that I still have a problem with, and although I'm giving you this tip, I should probably listen to this tip myself, but it's do not buy all the equipment and all the things that you see out there, especially with Instagram nowadays. Everybody's rolling out new items. There's new gadgets, there's new things, or there's that same thing that you already have in a different color. I'm not saying not to support your friends or people in the industry. What I am saying is that this does tie back to our previous tip, which is choose your specialty. So when you choose your specialty and when you know what you're actually going to offer your clients, you're less likely to buy things that you don't need. But I'm also not saying not to experiment and invest a little bit on things that you can experiment with or play with. But what I am saying is to choose your equipment wisely, because there will come a point where you run out of space, or you have to move, or your circumstances change and you're left with things that you've never used. Okay, so tip number 4 is choose your audience. Who are you marketing to? Are you wanting to work with brides and only weddings? Are you wanting to work with event planners? Do you only want to do small parties, or are you wanting to offer dessert tables? So make sure you know who are you marketing to, because this will also tie into your price range, and it will also tie into your contracts. So for example, let me give you an example of when I started. I didn't know who I was marketing to. So there came a point where I didn't have any orders because I didn't know who I was marketing to. I didn't know how to promote myself or market myself. So I was so desperate, and I told my husband, I was like, I just want to make cakes. I just want orders. What if my prices are too expensive? What if nobody wants to order because they are just driven away by my prices? So I wanted to lower my prices, and I wanted to start marketing myself in, I don't know what they're called, but they're like Facebook groups where it's like garage sale, where people are just like selling things. And I'm not down talking them. That's not what I'm doing. But what I am saying is that most likely the type of customer that you will find on there has a cap at what they want to spend. And when I was about to post there, before I posted there, what I did is I actually searched in cakes, and I was looking at the types of businesses that were, promoting themselves on there. Usually the type of person that will buy from those posts is last minute and will always fight you on your price. So keep that in mind. And like I said in the beginning, do not take this the wrong way, but I'm being very brutally honest with you. Tip number 5 is learn to and make time to take photos of your work. So what I was doing in the beginning is I was just putting out like orders. I was so excited, first of all, to get any orders, and second of all, I didn't have any experience on how to take a good photo. And one thing I will tell you that helped my business a lot is photography. And the first time that somebody gave me constructive criticism, my dear friend Lily, she was looking through my profile and she was like, oh my god, your cakes are great, but there was that but. And I was like, oh my god, what? She's like, but I can see your kitchen outlets on every single one of your photos. Your counters are dark, the backsplash is dark, so I don't know where to look when I'm looking. So she gave me a mini lesson, and she said, you have to showcase what you're selling. So make sure that in the beginning, when you're starting out as far as photography goes, if you don't know anything else, go simple. What I would suggest as far as that also is looking through Instagram and Pinterest. What are the kind of cake photos that you like to see? And mimic that. I do have a video on basics as far as photography goes, so I'll make sure to link that so you can watch it. But when starting photography and when taking photography in your beginning, you don't need to spend a lot of money. A lot of the things that I use to photograph my cakes and backdrops and all that stuff are from the dollar store. So make sure you take the time to take photos of your work. Tip number 6 is learn to price your cakes and learn to value your work. I mentioned earlier that there came a point where I was so desperate for work. Like I just wanted to make cakes that I really said to myself and to my husband, I was like, maybe I should just lower my price. And there's a few things wrong with that statement that I said, because you have to remember that whether you have a job, like a full-time job, and cakes is your side business, or whether cakes is your full-time business, when you decide to take an order or a few orders, you also have a family. So when you're willing to make a cake for less money and for the same amount of time that it would take you to make a cake for more money, make sure you're following me here. So when you're willing to make a cake for less money for the same amount of time, that doesn't make sense. So it took me a lot of time, practice, a lot of encouragement from other people to actually see that my work was worth what I was asking. Also, another thing that I want to add to cake pricing is that my motto was always work smarter and not harder. What that means is that, for example, let's say that, I don't know, Morgan, this is a pretend person. Let's say that Morgan is selling this cake for $50 and Cynthia is selling the same cake or a similar cake for $100. But I know there's a drastic difference in there, but the justification of your price comes with the quality, with your reputation, with how you're packaging the cake. So if Morgan is just giving you the cake on a flimsy cake board, but Cynthia is giving you a cake drum, and Morgan is just giving you your cake without a box, but Cynthia is wrapping your cake in a BRP box, you know, those are things that will differentiate you within the community or the area that you live in, and it will help to build a reputation that your cake is worth paying the $100 versus Morgan. Tip number 7 is to have a contract. This is something that I didn't have about maybe 8 or 9 months, and I didn't have a contract. I started actually paying attention, or it became something that I paid attention to in December of, I want to say it was December 2016 or December 2017. If I find the conversations, I'll post them here. But it was a client that contacted me a few months prior and said, for this date in December, I want a frozen themed cake. And I was like, great, I'm excited, because at that time, I think I had only made one frozen cake before. So I was very excited. I baked the cake, but I never contacted her again to verify, and that was my fault. I never contacted her again to verify, and I never got her to pay a deposit or a down payment or a retainer, whatever you want to call it. I never got her to do that. So I baked the cake, and then I was like, oh my God, maybe I should contact her and see, because I haven't heard from her. And the last time that I messaged her and, you know, gave her the details on cakes, it showed that she had read my message, but she never replied. Lo and behold, I contacted her and she said, oh, my plans have changed. We're not making the party anymore. You know, blah, blah, blah. So fast forward, I am left with a cake now that, although I already had the ingredients because I was baking at the time, in a way it's a loss for my business, but in another way, I ended up turning that cake into like a practice cake or a portfolio cake, which in the end ended up being okay, but not really. So make sure that you have contracts, and within your contract can be a long contract, a short contract. It can have different clauses, it can have different things. So I can also make a video on my particular contract if you guys want to see that. But just make sure that you have a contract and that you always verify that that person is actually going to need that order, because you can potentially be left out with cakes or apples or whatever it is you bake, and the person doesn't actually need it anymore. So make sure you have a contract and you take a deposit. Tip number 8 is to learn your limits. And when I say learn your limits, I say it lightly, because although I want you to go and try new things, when taking orders, don't take an order that you know, or that you know in your gut is not going to work out. So when I first started, in the beginning, I used to take orders for like tiered cakes and buttercream cakes and fondant cakes and, you know, those kinds of cakes. But I did have somebody request a 3D sculpted cake at the time. At the time, I still hadn't taken any classes, done any research, practiced on how to make a 3D sculpted cake, and I knew that I would be setting myself up for failure, so I declined the order. And I will never regret declining that order, because at that time I was just starting out, and I had already built a small reputation and a good reputation on quality, customer service, on responsiveness, on how pretty my cakes were at the time, that I wasn't willing to let my reputation suffer for me wanting to get paid to experiment on making a 3D sculpted cake. So I'll never regret that decision. And what I did after that is, I don't know if I really want to get into 3D sculpted cakes. So I had a curiosity and I ended up taking classes, but I knew what my limitations were. So don't feel like you have to take every order, and don't feel that because Morgan is making I don't know, fault line cakes, that you have to make fault line cakes. Make sure that your business is built upon quality over quantity, and quality over whatever else everybody else is doing. Tip number 9 is to create a schedule and to always prepare. So make sure that and you'll kind of get into the rhythm of your schedule as time passes and with more orders that you make, and you'll see what days work for you. So for example, this is a quick rundown of how my schedule used to work. One day I would sit and look at my orders. The next day I would sit and verify with my customers that had already paid their deposits if they still needed the order. Because within my contract, I also had a cancellation fee or a cancellation clause. Then there's a day where you make fondant work if you need any ahead of time. There's a day for baking, there's a day for filling, there's a day for ganaching, fondant, photography. So make sure that you analyze your business as it's growing and write things down, or have a calendar, or if you're more like digitally savvy, on your computer, you know, record on this day I did this, or on this day I did that, on this day I bake, so that you can create a schedule that works with your personal life schedule, because you have a personal life. Some of you probably have a job, some of you probably have kids, so you have to be able to set yourself up for success by having a schedule that works with your time. Okay, and finally, for tip number 10 is create a social media account so you can promote your business. I'm not saying to go and open a Twitter, a Facebook, a Snapchat, an Instagram, a YouTube all at the same time. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm also not saying to go and open a website if you're not comfortable operating your own website yet. Make sure that aside from running your business through social media, that you also have it as a way of like a virtual portfolio, because that's how you're going to get clients. And make sure that when you are posting or when you are putting your photos up there, that you provide, like, for example, let's say that I posted this cake, that you give a little bit of a description, because in the beginning, that's what your social media is doing. You're describing to your clients what you can do. And there's many different ways to set up your social. So make sure that whatever social media you choose, that you are using it to promote your business and what you're selling. Social media in itself is a whole another animal, and it's very crazy and it's always changing. So that's another separate video. So I know that was a lot of information to take in. I know that it's a lot to digest and a lot to think about, but I hope that these tips that I gave you help you in a way, because when I started in a very small town. Back then, there wasn't a lot of people that were willing to open up and give you their secret or share with you what they were doing, because I think it was a little bit more of, you know how people say now, like community over competition or something like that. Back then it was a lot of like, you're my competition, I'm not going to share with you. So I hope that you find these tips helpful. I know that I rant and I like digress a lot, so I hope that doesn't bother you. I hope I got my point across. And definitely, I do want to just stress that my videos are simply my opinion. It's not to talk anybody down or to say that if you are doing the opposite of what I just mentioned, it doesn't mean that you're not doing good. These are just tips that have helped me in my business, to grow my business, and to make sure that I'm out there and that people are finding me. So I hope it was very helpful. Let me know in the comments below which ones of these tips you didn't know about. What's helped you? Have you tried it? What are you struggling with as far as promoting your business? Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to like this video, comment, share with someone that you know, and definitely subscribe before you go. And I'll see you next time. Bye.